Today we're talking about the top 3 mistakes beginners make when painting their first DIY project. If you're a beginner, this is for you. If you've been painting for a little while, but maybe you're struggling a bit, let's go back to the basics. I'm going to start off with number 1. This is starting off on the wrong foot. What does that mean exactly? I had many paint parties back in the day that I would go to, and I would be letting everybody kind of just begin wherever they felt like they needed to begin, thinking that it came to everybody very naturally, like it does to me. And I would walk around, and inevitably there would always be that one person at the party who was starting with black paint on a round tip brush, and they were tracing the outlines of their design onto the blank wood. And if you've been painting for any time at all, you know that this is the wrong way to do it. In our minds, I think we think if we paint black lines on first, then we've kind of got our coloring book, right? We know where we're supposed to paint things and we can keep everything inside the line. That's wrong. You really won't be able to keep everything inside those black lines. And even if you do, the color as it meets up to that black line is going to look messy. So putting those black outlines and like fine details, which is really what they're called, go on at the end of the project, not at the beginning. So starting off on the wrong foot is starting in the wrong place. You need to start with your background colors. What is furthest in the back of the design, or what large area do you need to cover that's kind of behind everything first? So for example, the door hanger behind me, that would be this whole area that's black and white buffalo plaid. I would start by painting that whole area white. I wouldn't even start with the pumpkin. And then I would add the buffalo plaid and then the pumpkin. So I'm building forward to the front of the design, right? The other thing that I see they do wrong when starting off on the wrong foot is painting the second coat before the first coat is even dry. I'd be walking around my paint parties and their first coat would still be shiny and wet, and they're going ahead and dipping and getting more and just putting more and more paint on, and they're like, it's not going on smoothly. I don't understand what's going wrong, Tamara. And I would say, smooth out what you've got already. If you've got too much paint, kind of scoop some of it off and put it, on a paper towel or paper plate, just off the project. Get some of that excess off, and then smooth out what you've got. Even if it looks uneven, smooth it out as best you can and then dry it. That's so important. You have to dry your project in between each coat, because if my first coat on the project is looking really splotchy and I just keep adding paint and none of it's really drying, it's just moving around, we're not really getting an even coat. So if you dry in between coats, then you're starting fresh with the second coat and you're getting better coverage. Also, if your paint is having a hard time getting coverage and it feels like it's sticking more in places than it is in others, try dampening your brush a little bit. Or I like to use this little water spritzer, and I'll spritz the surface of the project, and that just sometimes helps this paint smooth out. The other way you may be starting off on the wrong foot is choosing wrong colors that don't really go together. This was something that I struggled a lot with in the beginning. I would pick the brightest, boldest, most fun colors that I could for the project. I'm like, oh, I love purple, I love lime green, I love bright pink, and I love yellow. And I would pull it all together, and I really wouldn't look at how the colors went together before I started painting. I would just start painting and adding the colors. And then I get partway through the project, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, ooh, this is feeling a little harsh. The colors were all really fun and really bright, but when they're put together, it's like a lot of loud people in the room together. You know what I mean? It's like as if everybody is in the room shouting at each other. When you look at these colors, they're all shouting at each other and they're shouting at you, and they don't feel like they really complement one another. So if you're going to be using a really bright color palette, and we do have a whole video that talks about color palettes that you can go and watch that will help you with this, you might have to choose some colors that kind of allow that color to be loud and bright without competing with it, or colors that complement one another a little bit more rather than shouting at each other. This also goes the opposite way too. Sometimes maybe all your colors are pastel and they're all so soft that none of them really stand out from one another or really just kind of draw the eye. They all just kind of meld together. That doesn't work either. So that is all different ways you can start off on the wrong foot, with starting with your outlines, starting second coats before your first coat's dry, or choosing colors that don't really go well together. So the second biggest mistake that I hear beginners making with their first project is starting with a poor setup. You need to set up your area that you're going to be painting before you even sit down to paint. You need a cup of clean water. You need your brushes. You need a paper towel, maybe some baby wipes, because even though you think you might not need them, you'll probably need them. You might want a heat gun or a hairdryer nearby. to speed up that first coat drying. Otherwise, you're going to sit here and go and blow blow on it, or have to talk. Or if you're a snacker, it's a good time to eat a snack. But if you're like me and you're like, oh, I want to move on to the next part, I want to add polka dots, or I want to hurry up and get to the fun part, you need a hairdryer or a heat gun to kind of speed that part up so that you don't get bored with the project. At least I do. The third thing that is a big mistake that most people make when starting their first painting project is getting super stressed out, right? When you're sitting down to paint, it needs to be relaxing. It needs to feel like this is your escape. There's a couple different ways you can do that. Number one, tell yourself this doesn't have to be perfect. Give yourself some grace. Allow yourself to make mistakes and know that it's just paint. I can paint over it. I can clean it up with a baby wipe, and I can fix anything. It doesn't matter. I could just play and have fun. Another way is to not give up in the ugly middle. What's the ugly middle, you might wonder? It's when you get that first base coat down and you're starting to move on to some of your other details, but it hasn't all started coming together quite yet. Maybe you aren't adding the outlines or the highlights yet. You haven't added the lettering yet. You're kind of in that weird middle where it doesn't feel like it's all pulled together yet, but it feels like a mess. This is where people usually give up because they're like, ugh, I just don't like it right now, but they can't see the forest for the trees. You just got to keep going. Get to those last parts. Keep working through it till you get to the end and you really can see the overall picture. And if you're still struggling, put it down for a while. Walk away, come back to it, because you'll be a lot more forgiving to yourself after you've had a good night's rest or maybe a snack, and come back later and you can see it with fresh eyes. Another way to not be stressed when you're painting is to turn on some music or a TV show that you like, or a movie. If it's just me in here, a lot of times I'll turn on some Netflix or binge watch a show that I can kind of watch without looking at the screen the whole time. You know, some of those shows that you kind of listen to without actually having to watch them. Those are really great. If you're painting with some friends, turn on some fun music. Get the energy up. Or if you don't want high energy music, turn on some like spa music where you all feel like you're meditating while you're painting. Do something fun to kind of let yourself just relax. Have some fun snacks around. Have something to drink. I always have my cup nearby. And just allow yourself to take a deep breath and just paint and relax and enjoy the process. Because if you're not enjoying it, then you may as well pick another hobby. I hope that this has helped some of you who are maybe struggling as a beginner painter and you're not sure where to begin, or maybe you've experienced some of these difficulties and maybe you're like, that was what I was doing wrong. So good luck with your future painting endeavors, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. Browse some of my other videos. There are all kinds of really great tips in here. Like I said, if you're struggling with the paint color thing, go check out that video next, and I'll see you next time. Happy painting, guys. Bye.